September 26, 1983. Inside a Soviet nuclear command center, an alarm triggers. The satellite system detects 5 American nuclear missiles moving toward Soviet territory. Military protocol is clear. Report the launch immediately and initiate a counterstrike. Under these standing orders, the world is minutes away from a nuclear exchange. The commanding officer on duty looked at the data and saw a logical gap. He reasoned that a genuine first strike would involve hundreds of missiles to ensure total destruction, not just 5. He chose to ignore the computer's alarm and reported a false alarm. He was right. The system mistook sunlight reflecting off high-altitude clouds for the thermal signature of a missile launch. The officer was Stanislav Petrov. By refusing to blindly follow a flawed system's protocol, he prevented a chain reaction that would have ended human civilization. Petrov demonstrated metacognitive intelligence. This is the ability to step outside a system's logic, recognize its inherent limitations, and refuse to trust a biased output. It is easy to see flaws in external systems like computer code or social media algorithms. We know they are programmed with specific rules and biases. But there is a far more powerful, invisible system running in the background that most people never notice: the human brain. Your brain does not record reality like a camera. It's a biological system that actively filters and distorts information to protect its own internal programming. We assume our eyes show us the world exactly as it is, but neuroscience suggests the brain is never a passive observer. Instead, the brain functions as a generative simulator. It predicts what the next moment should look like and uses its existing data to fill in the gaps before you even experience them. Observe this rotating mask. When it turns to show the hollow, concave interior, the image appears to pot outward into a normal face. The brain overwrites the actual sensory data. Because your brain's model has only ever processed outward projecting faces, it ignores the reality of the hollow curve and forces the image to match its expectations. This predictive processing even influences your health. In the placebo effect, the brain's prediction of healing is so strong that it can physically reduce blood pressure and suppress pain signals in the body. The goal of the brain is not to show you the truth. It is to reduce the gap between its predictions and your sensory input, even if that means distorting reality to stay consistent. To save biological energy, the brain compresses repeated behaviors and predictions into automatic loops. Eventually, it merges these loops into a single master model of how you interact with the world. This master algorithm is your identity. It acts as a filter, deciding which thoughts are allowed in and which behaviors are executed automatically. The danger arises when objective reality threatens this identity filter. When the data doesn't match who we think we are, the brain's logic often breaks down. In one study, law students with high mathematical ability were asked to solve a generic statistical problem about skin cream. They interpreted the data perfectly. But when the researchers used the exact same numbers for a problem about gun control, these same experts suddenly began making basic mathematical errors. Because the data challenged their political identity, their brains rejected the math to protect the internal model. High intelligence is not a shield against delusion. Without metacognitive awareness, a high IQ is just a more sophisticated tool the brain uses to defend its own biases. A rigid identity creates a static life. When your internal model refuses to update, you become trapped in the same behavioral loops, regardless of how much your circumstances change. Ancient philosophy has warned about this for centuries. Attachment to a fixed version of the self is the primary driver of human suffering. True intelligence is always defined by adaptation. About 2.4 billion years ago, when the Earth's atmosphere was suddenly flooded with oxygen that was toxic to existing life, a select few organisms survived, not by resisting the massive change, but by evolving to use that toxin as fuel. However, you cannot simply think your way into a new identity. The brain views sudden changes to its master model as a threat to its stability and will actively suppress your motivation to protect the status quo. Because your biology is optimized for stability over growth, changing who you are requires a systematic approach to bypass the brain's defensive alarms. Step number 1 is the Bayesian mindset. Follow the logic used by figures like Elon Musk. Treat your beliefs as testable hypotheses with varying degrees of probability rather than absolute facts. Step 2 is environment normalization. You must place yourself in social and physical ecosystems where your desired identity is the baseline. If the people around you already behave the way you want to, your brain will stop flagging that behavior as a threat. Step 3 is providing behavioral evidence. Self-perception theory suggests that the brain discovers its identity by observing your own actions. When you feed the system repeated, small actions, the brain eventually has no choice but to update its identity model to reflect the new evidence. Ultimately, intelligence is not a measure of what you already know. It is a measure of how quickly you can rewrite your own identity.